Welcome back to Moneyline MMA. We have another week of exciting fights, Nick. It's happening now. We're finally there to Nate Diaz versus Khamzat Chimaev. This fight's taking place in Las Vegas, September 10th, at 9 p.m. Central District Time at the T-Mobile Arena. I'm excited about this one, Nick. What can you say about this fight?
Yeah, Jose, I'm pumped for this. For a while, we were questioning whether this fight was announced months ago. Is this going to actually be the headliner? Are they going to find a belt to put on the line for this card? But instead, they end up finding Tony Ferguson versus Jingliang Li for the co-main event, which I think is going to be its own interesting situation later on. But for now, we've got the main event on our hands and a guy that's favored by a ridiculous minus 1,200. Khamzat Chimaev has been on a streak, five win streak in the UFC specifically, with all of those fights up until at least Gilbert Burns ending before the judges needed to get involved. Nate Diaz, the legend, sitting at plus 630, Jose. I cannot believe that. It's as a UFC guy that has only been around for a few years, but long enough to at least have seen Nate Diaz's most iconic moments. And I gotta say, it's unfortunate to see him go out this way. I think it's well established that this will be his last fight for the UFC, at least, unless some miracle happens and they turn it around. But he'll likely be continuing at another promotion elsewhere after this, and he's plus 630 to end his tenure here, Jose. I can't believe it.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy because I mean, the way you look at it is I've heard some stuff about this fight too, like why it's been made. Like he's definitely declined like a lot of other fighters before Kamza. Like he just wanted that fight to he kept saying to really make him hungry, come out and be the best version of himself. And listening to some of the videos of Nate talk about this fight, it's kind of crazy. He was mentioning the way his mindset going into this fight. That the money line of him being a big underdog, it's probably going to change a lot closer to the fight because the way Nate talks about the fight is crazy. He was saying that he was looking at Khamzat Shaman for a while and that he was waiting to see if he was going to beat Gilbert Burns. And if he were to beat Gilbert Burns, then he'd have the privilege to fight him. That is crazy. People are looking at it as like, whoa, Khamzat's like, the UFC sending me to take his head. And while Nate Diaz is like straight up like, it's like, I'm giving you the honor to fight me, and it's I don't know, man. I just wouldn't sleep on Nate. That can be a dangerous Nate. He kept up with Leon Edwards, and he's the champion right now. And Leon has phenomenal striking. Kamzat's going to come in heavy, probably try to be a heavy wrestler in this one, and take him down and try to ground and pound and smash him. But Nate Diaz, his high level jujitsu, he can possibly catch Khamzat slipping. I think that fight with Gilbert Burns really showed a lot of holes in Khamzat's game, and it shows that when the going gets tough, he kind of slugs it out as well. And I'm kind of interested to see how he'll do when Nate Diaz doesn't start going down from his punches, and Nate Diaz starts countering back with some Stockton slaps. Like that's how I feel about it, Nick.
No kidding, man. This is just insane. Overall, man, I think Nate Diaz is definitely, like you said, someone to watch out for. There's no way I'm that confident betting minus 1,200 money on Kamzat. And this coming from a guy where Smish, he's my favorite fighter right now in the UFC, I've got to say. I'm not saying I don't think he's going to win the fight, but those odds are just insane to me. Nate Diaz is going to come out and put up a crazy good fight. I don't think Khamzat's going to knock him out, Jose. Maybe, I guess Nate has been knocked out in the past, but not in a long, long time. So I don't know, man. I feel like this could be a war, a 25-minute war, and Khamzat's bout with Gilbert Burns is just kind of a warm up to what he'll be experiencing against Nate Diaz. I mean, that Gilbert Burns fight was just 3 rounds. Imagine. I mean, Nate Diaz will gladly take the beating. That's pretty much his status quo is take the beating, exhaust the guy out, and then pounce when he's exhausted and when he makes a mistake. And that's the one thing that would make me really nervous about Khamzat, because he's so good, but he is young still, and he only has 11 pro fights on his career. Will he be able to have the experience to know, like, not to slip up and be able to not slip up? Because there's also one thing between knowing not to slip up and actually being able not to slip up. So it's a tough one, Jose. I think in the end, I definitely lean Khamzat for sure winning the fight, but there's no way I'm confident enough to sit here and put minus 1,200 money on him, I don't think.
Yeah, likewise, Nick. I'm definitely gonna go for Kamzat on this. I think he's definitely gonna have to stay composed and not do what he did against Gilbert Burns and just start pressing forward and taking shots to the face. Even though Nate Diaz doesn't throw as many shots as Kamzat does, and his strikes may not hurt as much as Kamzat's strikes, Nate Diaz strikes though they do add up over time. So yeah, like I wouldn't count him out too much, but again, I'm gonna go with Kamzat on this. I don't know if he gets the finish, but I'll definitely go with Kamzat as taking the victory in this matchup.
Yeah, we'll get back into the details again in the betting section, just regarding some of the more specifics on that. But value wise, man, I'm really seeing a lot there, and over plus 600 for Nate Diaz. But that being said, we both agree on having Khamzat win this fight.
And then, well, Nick, that brings us to the next fight of the night. This is the co-main event. We have the number 14th ranked Li Jingliang coming out of China versus Tony Ferguson. This is Tony Ferguson's return to welterweight. He won the Ultimate Fighter as a welterweight, and he's got a lot of stoppages at welterweight, and he's actually not lost at welterweight. So he's currently still undefeated at welterweight, and everyone just knows obviously what he did at the lightweight at the lightweight division, clearing up that amazing win streak, beating the likes of like Rafael Dos Anjos, Cowboy Cerrone, Anthony Pettis. The list goes on. He's beat the who's Edson Barboza, Kevin Lee. So it's going to be great to see him coming back and not having to cut as much weight. Who like since that loss to Justin Gaethje, he's kind of changed. I feel like his career has just been up and down, and he looked really good against Michael Chandler when they fought last time in that first round. I actually had Tony Ferguson winning that round, and then obviously we all know what happened. Michael Chandler landed that crazy head kick, but that being said, it's no surprise to me that Tony Ferguson is coming in as the betting underdog, though, at plus 220. Li Jingliang himself, he's been looking phenomenal, picking up a win streak pretty much since he's lost to Khamzat, and he is the betting favorite at minus 295. So I don't know, man. This fight kind of reminds me a lot of the main event. What are your thoughts on this, Nick?
I hear you, man. In terms of being similar to the main event, I could see this being an absolute brawl. Obviously, Tony Ferguson's not a guy that goes down easy, and it's going to take a highlight reel play or move to pretty much take him out of the fight before it goes to the judges. So this is easily going to be a great warm up appetizer going into the main event. I think it's going to be really close, man. I do understand Jingliang being the favorite. Minus 295 does seem to be a bit much considering the previous success that you mentioned Ferguson's had at welterweight. It'd be one thing if it just seemed like it was one of those things where he's getting old and he's like, oh, I just want to not have to cut as much weight. Give me a guy at welterweight so I don't have to cut so much. And if that was the case, and we didn't have any previous experience with him in that division, then I might be a little bit more nervous. But I think Tony Ferguson does have a pretty good chance here. It's going to be relatively evenly matched on the feet. Striking, I think. Obviously, Ferguson's on a 4-fight losing streak and hasn't won since 2019, man. I think he's really it's going to be a situation where he's got to dig deep in his mind, in his heart. And I think Tony Ferguson's the kind of guy that's going to be able to do that. Uh, it means that he fights for more than himself. Obviously, he's mentioned in multiple interviews about how he's fighting for his family and this and that. And I just think that's the kind of exact mentality that a legend has. that can continue fighting no matter his age, really. I mean, obviously you hit a wall at some point, but even guys like Glover can continue to dominate in their 40s. So I think Tony still has a lot left in him if he wants to continue going, and he knows that he just really needs to turn it around right here. And honestly, I kind of want to favor him here, man. It's tough though because Jingliang has beaten some really solid fighters. He knocked out Santiago Ponzinibbio last year. That was pretty great knockout, and having also knocked out Salikov earlier this year. Obviously, it's more of a recency bias thing. That was only a couple of months ago, and he's fighting again. So, man, it's definitely a tough one.
Yeah, as we were talking about this fight too, I was looking at it towards like Tony Ferguson. I'm like, yo, man, him as the underdog, I can see him slicing up Jingliang with those elbows and cutting him up and even winning unanimous decision. The thing that worries me though is that Tony Ferguson doesn't really have a traditional camp. His camp is kind of like the Wild West, and he did go to Greg Jackson's MMA, which is where John Jones has built up his career at, and Holly Holm has also built her career up there, and other members, other UFC greats like Rashad Evans and Jordan St. Pierre as well have gone through that gym. But he only spent like a week there. So when I found that out, I'm like, oh man, who knows how much improvements you can really make in just spending 1 week at a great super camp like that. Like I think Tony Ferguson, if he really wants to get a win, if he's really serious about trying to end off his UFC career on a positive note, I think he should have gone to a bigger camp like maybe American Top Team, or Jackson Winks as well, but for a longer period of time, like not just 1 week. It's really hard to make so much improvements in 1 week. You need a coach to be there consistently guiding you and seeing your progress and filling up all your holes. It's really hard to do that in just 1 week. That's just like a crash course, and who knows how much of that he'll actually bring into this fight. Zhiliang has a lot of power, and so if Tony isn't careful enough, it can be lights out again for him, and it'd be sad to see him actually get brutally knocked out twice in a row. But if he plays it smart and he's quick, he can pull off a win. I just don't know if I think Jilang is going to be a little too big for Tony to even finish him within the 3 rounds. And Jilang has a lot of power, like I said, where I can see him knocking out Tony. So for this one, I am going to go with the betting favorite, Jilang.
Yeah, fair enough, man. I will say one thing I wanted to point out is Tony's got a 70, he's listed at a 76-inch reach, and Jing Liang has a 71-inch reach. I think that's pretty, maybe 72. I guess Topology's got 72, UFC's got 71, somewhere in between, right? But regardless, it's pretty significant. And Tony's, yeah, he's long and he's bony. If he can get those elbows in there, because Jing Liang's going to have to get up close to get those power punches. And I don't know, you might be right about Jing Liang being able to outlast and win this fight, but I think personally I'm leaning towards the underdog El Kakui here, man. I gotta ride the American, and I think he's gonna have to dig deep, like I mentioned earlier, and I think he will, and it's gonna be gritty. I would probably lean towards the fight going the distance, if anything, because I just don't see Tony getting knocked out, but I also am not sure he knocks out Jin Liang. So I'm going to go with my final pick being Tony Ferguson here, the underdog. And now that would lead us into another, the catchweight. It's a fight at catchweight. Kevin Holland and Daniel Rodriguez. This fight is supposed to be at 170, Jose, and we're looking at an interesting line here. Kevin Holland, the betting favorite, minus 196 against Daniel Rodriguez plus 152 underdog. So he being Kevin Holland is one of my favorite fighters as well. I'm being spoiled on this card with my favorite fighter Khamzat as the main event, and Kevin Holland. He's just so fun to watch, and he's been having some great success in 2022 so far. Already 2 fights so far this year, and obviously Alex Oliveira has kind of been on a rough streak of his own. So maybe that's not as impressive. Tim Means, I feel like, is a pretty impressive win for sure. And Kevin Holland is definitely getting the respect from that big win by fighting Daniel Rodriguez, who's now 16-2 in his pro career on a 3-fight win streak. So, Jose, I'm fascinated to see what you think about this one.
Yeah, I'm excited to see Kevin Holland return to the welterweight division. Well, catchweight to be exact. My bad. Not I'm not too sure why it's a catchweight fight, but yeah, I mean, Daniel Rodriguez has been looking nothing but phenomenal, getting that unanimous decision win over Kevin Lee, and he also has a unanimous decision win over Mike Perry. Which back then, I did not think too highly of Mike Perry's striking, but after seeing him actually in that bare knuckle fight against and winning unanimously against Michael Venom Page, that actually, that tells me that Daniel Rodriguez definitely has great hands. And this is a great matchup against Kevin Holland. He's been racking up a nice 2-fight win streaks over Alex Oliveira and Tim Means. Yeah, it brings a lot of electricity to the air. I think this one, man, I don't know if this fight will actually be finished, to be honest. Man, I think both dudes are just too good and will have so much respect for each other where I don't actually see them finishing each other off. But I honestly, if I were going to go for a fighter on this one, I would lean towards Kevin Holland. Yeah, I'm going with Kevin Holland just because of more of his experience, especially beating bigger and tougher guys, and having more experience than Daniel Rodriguez. I mean, Kevin Holland's also beat the likes of like Joaquin Buckley and Anthony Hernandez at 185, while also racking up a win over the legend Jacare Souza. And he's also got experience in there and gone unanimous decision against Marvin Vettori and Derek Brunson. So for this one, yeah, I'm just gonna have to go with Kevin Holland. I think his experience and just the improvements he's been making, like in terms of his wrestling as well, will be able to keep up with Daniel Rodriguez's pace. Daniel Rodriguez, again, he does have good hands, but so does Kevin Holland. And Kevin Holland also has proven that he has good jiu-jitsu. So, yeah, for this one, you can write me down for Kevin Holland.
I love to hear the support for my guy Kevin Holland, and just so you know, because I wasn't aware, and I definitely had to look it up. According to Low Kick MMA, the fight here is at catchweight because it was supposed to be at 170 welterweight. However, according to Kevin Holland, he didn't name Daniel Rodriguez, but he said he could. He said somebody couldn't make weight, not me, right? So he's pretty much saying that Daniel Rodriguez couldn't make 170. He offered to do the fight at 185, and the UFC declined. And I don't know if this is coming from Kevin Holland. This could be speculation on his end, but he stated that the UFC didn't want to do it at 185, so he wouldn't be ranked in 2 divisions. So they made it at 180. So that's why it's catch weight, because this fight's happening at 180 pounds. And I just wonder how that impacts Kevin Holland's situation, because I feel like some of his advantage is being a guy with 81-inch reach in the welterweight division. I mean, that's just insane to think. I mean, this was supposed to be a welterweight fight, and now Daniel Rodriguez given an extra 10 pounds. I don't know if that's going to make enough of a difference to give him, the size advantage to win this fight. But I just do think that that's a fascinating angle to look at here. But regardless, man, I'm going to say I agree. A lot of the stats here, like Daniel Rodriguez has 8 strikes landed per minute, but he absorbs 5. It's pretty crazy, right? But I just, in this is one of those fights, I don't think it's going to matter, man. So I say I agree. I'm going with Kevin Holland here, man. I think he's going to use his long bony arms. And you've mentioned the fact that he beat Tim Means by Darce choke. He's gotten some jiu-jitsu to him, jiu-jitsu skills and strength. So you know what? Let's ride it out with my guy, Kevin Holland. I love it.
I love to hear it. Yep, both you and I for Kevin Holland. Yeah, for this one, I'm gonna go. I think this. I'm just gonna say unanimous decision because D-Rod is a tough guy, though. He is a tough fighter, and I actually do find it hard for him to be stopped, other than losing by unanimous decision. Looking at his record, he's only lost via split decision and unanimous decision. Those are his 2 losses on his record. So, yeah, the guy has a chin and he can strike. So. It's gonna go unanimous decision. That's the way I'm looking at it, Nick.
All right. Fair enough, man. Fair enough. I think that's a great call. Yeah, you might be right. If it's not unanimous decision, then potentially a submission for Kevin Holland. But I don't think that's is likely. So I'll agree with you on the decision there.
And that, that brings us to our next fight. It's a women's bantamweight bout between Irene Aldana versus Macy Chiasson. Right now, Irene Aldana, she is the betting favorite at minus 186, while Macy is the betting underdog at plus 144. Irene Aldana is one of my favorite fighters out of Mexico. She was the highest prospect when she first came in, and she's gone experience in the likes of like Holly Holm and Raquel Pennington, Beth Correa, all at one point challenged for the title, or Holly Holm did become champion and is actually challenged for the titles multiple times. She lost unanimous decision to her, but that's still, in my book, a lot of great experience. While on the other hand, Macy, she herself, she is coming in as the underdog. Not as much experience as Irene. She's 8-2. She has a win over Norma Dumas, who's actually fighting earlier on the card. But she's coming off a split decision win against her. It was a close one, and before that, she also lost to Raquel Pennington. She got submitted by Raquel Pennington, and no disrespect to Raquel Pennington, she did challenge for the title before, but I personally don't think that she is really the toughest of the tough in that division. I definitely think there's a lot of people that are ranked below her that could definitely beat her on any given day. So her losing to her is kind of like, okay, okay, like she did challenge for the title, so it looks good on paper, but it is Raquel Pennington, and I don't see Raquel challenging for the title anytime soon. And before that, she had a couple of wins. But that being said, I think Irene Aldana, I mean, she's so tall and lengthy and has phenomenal boxing, great boxing skills, a hard puncher. I don't know. What are your thoughts on this one, Nick?
Yeah, this is one I don't have too heavy of an opinion on either way, man. I think both of these girls are good fighters. I think I lean towards Irene Aldana in this fight. She just seems, like you mentioned about the experience. I think that's just one thing that's going to be very advantageous for her. She's a little bit smaller. It looks like a 4-inch reach disadvantage for her, with Chiasson having a 72-inch reach and Aldana having a 68-inch reach. So that's not quite ideal, but her fight history against Caitlin Chikagian and some of the better fights, she was able to beat Ketlin Vieira and then lose to Holly Holm by decision, but went the distance against Holly Holm. I mean, it's pretty impressive. She's not the most active fighter, that being Aldana. She's not, this is her first fight this year, and previous it was July 10th last year. So it's been a year and a couple of months since her last fight. Definitely not the most active, but maybe that's for the best. And obviously you mentioned Chiasson having come off of a split decision win against Duman earlier this year. It just isn't that impressive. And I agree, Raquel Pennington, she is definitely a respectable fighter, but I think a little bit more name than what she can back up in the ring. But still take the loss to Raquel Pennington as well. So it doesn't say much with both of these girls having lost to Raquel Pennington in the end, within the last 2 years. But yeah, so Jose, I think in the end, I am leaning towards the favorite just because, like I mentioned, I'm kind of on the fence, and I'm just gonna kind of slightly lean towards the Aldana. She's got a little bit better takedown defense. She's not been submitted in her career, so I don't think that's really a threat from Chiasson at least. And if I had to, I just think this is going to be a decision to Aldana.
Yeah, I agree with you, Nick. I'm going for Irene Aldana as well. Half of her wins are via unanimous decision. Macy's a tough girl. Don't know if I can see Irene really knocking her out, or submitting her. So yeah, like yourself, I'm going with her for with Irene Aldana, unanimous decision.
I love it. Yeah, I think that's just the best way to go here. Neither of these girls are going to have that big time knockout threat. I mean, Aldana does have a knockout on her belt, but it's just much more common for these girls to go to decision. So that's kind of what I'm going to take. But in the end, I'm not even going to have that as one of the best bets of the week, man. I think it's just going to be including Aldana potentially in a parlay, but that's about it. And now we are going to finish off with a banger, and this fight is going to be opening up our card here at UFC 279. We've got a light heavyweight bout between Johnny Walker and Ion Cutelaba. I'm excited to see this one, man. Cutelaba, a minus 196 favorite, and Johnny Walker, a plus 152 underdog. I feel like I'm used to seeing Cutelaba as the underdog, so it's kind of refreshing to see him as a favorite, but it's understandable in most cases. He's kind of been on a rough streak after having lost to Glover. He beat Khalil Roundtree and then had two losses in a row before drawing Dustin Jacoby, beat Devin Clark, then lost to Ryan Spann earlier this year by submission. So that's a tough run for Ion Cutelaba, but he is still a top threat. I mean, those are some big names that he two of the losses that he got in 2020 were Ankalaev twice. So that he got knocked out both times too. So just to make sure, I guess, is what the UFC was looking for there. But Jose, this is going to be fascinating. Johnny Walker's a big light heavyweight at 6'6". Will Ion be able to keep up with that and get up close without getting knocked out?
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to see this matchup. Is a fun one. It was originally, I think, going to be the co-main event, but I like that they moved it as the opener. I think starting the card off with a big bang like this is fun. Johnny Walker, yeah, he's not been looking, unfortunately, as good as everyone thought he would. You know, when he first came into the UFC, there was a lot of hype behind him, and he had all the flashy moves and crazy KOs, and just a funny guy. But then, you know, they paired him up, I think, maybe quickly with some of the top of the, like, some of the elite fighters like Corey Anderson, Thiago Santos. They both showed him, you know, that there's levels to this, and Corey Anderson ended up knocking him out in the first round, while Thiago Santos just ended up beating him unanimously. And then Jamal Hill, who's making a great run right now at the division. He's on a 3-fight winning streak. He ended up knocking out Johnny Walker in the first round, and that was like a bad KO. Like, Johnny got hit hard, and then he just went like a stiff as a board and fell back and hit his head against the cage. And that was kind of crazy to see. While Ion Cutelaba himself, you know, there was a lot of hype as well with him when he first came into the UFC, and he's been kind of like with some win losses, and he is coming off a submission loss to Ryan Spann. And like you mentioned, he historically has been the underdog, and so it is kind of refreshing to see him as the betting favorite. That, you know, even though Johnny Walker has not been looking so hot lately, I think that Johnny Walker can make the adjustments to beat Ion Cutelaba. He has the athleticism, and he already has experience. So I don't know. I think this may be one of the fights, very few fights on the card where I think it's gonna be stopped early. Well, like besides the co-main event and the main event. So, so half of them, I should say. But this fight, yeah, I think this isn't gonna make it to the end of the 3 rounds, Nick. That's how I'm feeling about this one.
You might be right, man. Johnny Walker is definitely an aggressive fighter. Most of his fights in the UFC have ended in a KO, whether that's him winning or losing. So I wouldn't be surprised to see this end before the 3 rounds is up. I think Cutelaba is definitely going to go in with some anger and with some intent just because of the fact that he's been struggling lately and he knows he's better than what his record shows at 16-7. So that does worry me if I'm going with Johnny Walker's side, but I'm not even going to cut it with the ifs anymore. I think I'm leaning Johnny Walker here, man. I think this is a great underdog spot. Cutelaba, as big of a fan as I am in him, I just don't think this is a great matchup for him. And I think Johnny Walker is going to be able to kind of keep his distance, bait him in, and just throw some haymakers. And Cutelaba's not a guy that's necessarily easy to knock out, but he's been knocked out before, mostly by Ankalaev. But I think Johnny Walker is going to show that he is another guy in the UFC who can knock Cutelaba out by doing it on September 10th. So put me down for Johnny Walker by knockout in that fight.
Yeah, Nick, I'm gonna 100% have to agree with you on that prediction. I'm actually, looking at it. The last win Johnny Walker has was a first round KO over Ryan Spann, and the last loss Ian Cutelaba has is first round submission by Ryan Spann. So I think, yeah, I'm definitely, just a little more of a recency bias, seeing that Johnny Walker was good enough to beat a dude in the first round, who then later on this guy ended up beating Ian Cutelaba in the first round as well. That kind of helps me feel a little more at ease with this prediction of Johnny Walker being able to beat Ian Cutelaba. So yeah, you could put me down with Johnny Walker winning this one within the first 2.5 rounds.
I love it, man. I think it's fascinating. This is one of the more like looking throughout for the whole card now. We've got a couple underdogs here. I mean, I know we disagreed on the co-main event. So I have Tony Ferguson as an underdog there, but Kevin Holland is a favorite, and Aldana is a favorite, and then Johnny Walker the underdog. So 2 out of the 5 fights we have, or at least I have, as underdogs. It's going to be tough to decide which one I want to put as my underdog of the week. But either way, I think that goes to show that the matchmaking was pretty solid this week for this card. This is one of those where I think we were a little bit nervous if it was even going to be a good card, and I guess it looks like it's rounding out to be pretty decent.
Yeah, a lot of people definitely like ourselves too. I know I was definitely criticizing this card at first. I'm like, yo, how can you put this card together and then have the other one 280 be like the probably the best card of the year? But 279, I mean, adding Tony Ferguson and Jingliang at the as the co-main event made it fun, and I think moving this as the opener made it fun. And as we were talking about earlier, we saw in the prelims as well, Jake Clear and Chris Barnett are going to be on there. You got Shamil versus Jilton Almeida. So yeah, not a bad card at all. Definitely not the best card of the year, but it's not as bad as people thought it out to be. From start to finish, it's got some bangers on there. Just some. I think it's like more of like a sleeper card, I guess. So who knows? I hope they prove us wrong, and it's one of the most exciting fights, like cards of the year.
No kidding, man. Well, unless you have anything else to add, then appreciate everybody for listening. Stay tuned. In just a moment, we'll get the betting portion going. But otherwise, those are our picks for UFC 279. Let's start getting in to the betting side of UFC 279. Before we discuss the bets here, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Moneylion MMA. We post weekly picks there before the main card starts on Saturday, as well as subscribe to us on YouTube. And let us know down below in the comments who you guys are going to be betting on this week. As we've discussed in the previous fights, you know our picks, but from here, let's get into the weeds and look at what the potential best bets are for this card. Now, of course, Chimaev. Let's start with the main event. Since we recorded, he has dropped down to minus 1,000 and Nate Diaz plus 630. So you still get really good odds on that underdog. And Khamzat isn't as heavy of a favorite as it looks like he used to be, although minus 1,000 is still kind of ridiculous. So I'm still staying away from an individual Khamzat bet in my personal portfolio, just because there's just not enough meat on the bone, in my opinion. And there's a lot of value there in the underdog, if anything. I think Nate Diaz is going to hold his own. I just don't think he's going to be able to make it happen. So we'll put Khamzat in the parlay that's discussed at the end. As far as Tony Ferguson and Jingliang go, that's one Jose and I disagreed on. I don't know. I have the underdog. I think Tony Ferguson is most dangerous with his back on the ropes, and that's just in the sense here that he could potentially get cut if he loses. So if he comes out, as the Tony Ferguson that's in his prime, or at least something similar to it, I think he's got this in the bag. Jose has Jingliang. So It's not going to be really any impactful bets. It's pretty much who you guys agree with on that fight. But I do see a lot of value in betting that underdog without a doubt. As far as Kevin Holland and Daniel Rodriguez, this is one that Jose and I did agree on. In fact, this is our lock of the week. We've got Kevin Holland. Daniel Rodriguez is a beast, and he's going to be hard to take down. But Kevin Holland is also a beast, and he's lanky. I think it's going to play to his advantage. Lock it up with Kevin Holland. Another fight we agreed on, finishing off here, really, Irene Aldana. She is the favorite. Go ahead and put her in the parlay. Finally, the fight that opens the card, young Cutelaba and Johnny Walker. This will be the underdog of the week, as Jose and I agree, Johnny Walker. So line it up and mark it down. This is a great bet to take as well. I don't know. This seems like a card where some of the underdogs are going to have a good chance to win, and I don't see some of these odds being fair. Tony Ferguson shouldn't be plus 235. I guess, it is the thought that he's moving up a division and this and that, but he's proven to be good in welterweight. So I think he'll hold his own. It'll just be a matter of his training, having that weird gym that he trains at, his own gym thing. But regardless, let's finish it off then with our parlays for this week. We've got our best bets, lock and underdog. Let's move over to parlay number one, being Irene Aldana plus Kevin Holland, our lock plus Chimaev. You'll get that 3-leg parlay at plus 155. Let's get a little bit more risky here. Let's add our underdog of the week, Johnny Walker, in here. That 4-leg parlay gives you plus 543. I think that's great money for a bet. I think it's pretty likely to happen. And if you really want to just do the pick sweep on the card, it's whether you agree with Jose or I on Jingliang and Tony Ferguson, the co-main event. Of course, I've got the underdog, so my 5-leg parlay will be 2,056 return. That's definitely something I want to put a couple dollars on to the side, but it's not going to be anything significant because, as I said earlier, I think the underdogs on this card have a really good chance. That parlay does have 2 underdogs winning, but who knows? Who knows? It could be. I could see Daniel Rodriguez beating Kevin Holland in a world, and I could see Nate Diaz. Maybe not. Maybe like 4, maybe like 3 out of 10 times if they were to fight, Nate Diaz wins, and if it just so happens to be this Saturday, then there's going to be a lot of people making money. But regardless, those are our best bets and our parlays of the week. Thanks for listening, guys, and stay tuned is what I'm looking to say here. Stay tuned. We will be back next week. Have a good one.